we assume right away that in our relationship, let's just go really close to something, right? Whether it's in your marriage, your best friend, right? You right away think about this, guys. When you get upset at that person, the first thing you're going to say is, they should have known me. They should have known why I was upset. They should have
Oh,
known how come, who I am. They know me. And
yes.
we change. Every day you're a different person. And the responsibility that we're handing to somebody else, our feelings, is so dangerous.
It's like we're giving away our power when we
Yes.
assume that other people know what we're thinking or feeling or talking about because, unless you explain yourself, how do other people know what's going on inside of you?
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Authentic Conversations. If this is your first time joining us, thank you. You know, my name is Amarelis, and I am here with the lovely Susan.
The lovely Susan, thank you.
Oh, and you know what? We just have to do the little whole thing, right? Like, if you love what you're seeing, please follow us. We need the follows, or like it, and just so that you can get notifications. You can find us on a podcast anywhere that you listen to your podcast, like Spotify, and we are on YouTube, and also we have TikTok and Instagram. So we're everywhere. There's a link tree. And if you have any suggestions of any subject that you would love for us to talk about, please let us know. We want to hear from you. This is not just, well, one thing for sure, this always makes our day much better and it helps us grow. But we also want to hear from you and know what kind of topics you would love for us to talk about. So
Oh,
thank you for joining us.
so we're diving right in because we want to
Yeah.
hear from you, right? So here's the thing. This is what we're talking about today. We're talking about, back to Don Miguel Ruiz, the 4 agreements, because it's just so important to keep going back to the 4 agreements because they're so fundamental in life. And the 3rd agreement is don't make assumptions. So we can make lots of assumptions about how others are perceiving what we're doing, that's why we want to hear from you. Like, we want to know what you want to know. We want to know what it is that resonates with you, that helps us create more content in the likes of, what feels good, because assumptions are a dangerous thing. So we can assume the best possible scenario, or we can assume the worst case scenario, which is more often where we lean in life, So yeah, let's talk about Don Miguel Ruiz and not making assumptions.
Oh my God, the stories that we tell ourselves, and that's what he talks about, right? So even with this, like, we can tell ourselves 100 stories of why we shouldn't podcast. Who are we? We've talked about this a lot in Authentic Conversations. It's the stories. And it's one thing that I love when I reread it yesterday again, was the fact that he says, you have to ask. And for us, I know for sure that saying follow us, please hit the like button, is a hard ask. It's not the most comfortable thing you think it would be, but it's not. Because for us, we really want to do it out of the bottom of our hearts, but we understand that there's this other world. And he makes it so simple. He goes, if you assume
That people understand that that's a part of the process, then, you're making a big assumption. And again, we do that all the time. Think about how many times in your life you have projected your own feelings of lack of self-worth or nervous energy, or your storylines onto others, and you believe that that's what they believe, so you become frozen, you don't move forward because you're assuming that someone else is going to judge you, or you're assuming that someone else disagrees with what it is that you feel really important about, whether it's in your family relationships or your personal relationships or your friendships or your former friendships. Yeah.
well, Susan, like, he goes in the book, right? He talks about the fact that we assume right away that in our relationship, let's just go really close to something, right? Whether it's in your marriage, your best friend, right? You right away think about this, guys. when you get upset at that person, the first thing you're going to say is, they should have known me. They should have known why I was upset. They should have
Oh,
known how come, who I am. They know me. And we
yes.
change. Every day you're a different person. And the responsibility that we're handing to somebody else, our feelings, is so dangerous.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's like we're giving away our power when we
Yes.
assume that other people know what we're thinking or feeling or talking about, because unless you explain yourself, how do other people know what's going on inside of you? Even your most intimate friends, right? They may know something's up because your energy is off, right? We talk about energy too. They may know something is up because your energy is off. But if you don't communicate clearly what you're feeling or what you're thinking or what you need, no one else can read that, right? So it's like you assume that someone is going to figure out what you need and meet that need. And that's love, right? If they loved me, they would know what I need. No, no, real love is asking for what you need and then having the dialogue about it.
So
Common
we just went.
communication.
Yeah. So we just passed the biggest holiday that I'm calling a Taco Tuesday, because I feel that it's just so, I remember I have triggers about this day. It's not even a holiday. It's a celebration that we all should show each other love, when we should show each other love every single day. But it's these assumptions of, what type of gift am I giving my loved one? How do I show them how much I love them? Let's talk about that, Susan. We make this into a material thing, into the flowers, which the next day are on half off. So you
Yeah.
spend all this money, and if you don't get the flowers at work so that people can see how much, you're being loved, you feel insignificant and you feel less loved, instead of wiping it all off and telling that person that you're with, what is your love language? I mean, that's another whole book that we can talk about,
Yeah.
the 5 love language, right, Susan?
Yeah, love language is a fabulous place to start because it's a great awareness for who you are. So if you don't know anything about it, Google it. We'll talk about it, at another time. But the truth is, right, the flowers and the exorbitant gifts and the overflow one time a year is not it. It's not it. It's the daily experiences, or it's the creation of experiences or having special experiences, because your heart knows who you're connected with. You don't have to show other people. You don't have to demonstrate to the world, them that you're loved, that you have value to someone else, because you have value to everyone else.
Yeah. And you have to love
So,
yourself first.
yeah.
And then the rest is the beautiful part of love, right? It's like, and if for you, I mean, some of us feel uncomfortable with that whole fiasco of display, so that everyone can see. So you have to communicate that to your
Yes.
loved one, because your loved one also wants to make sure they're up to par,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so
There's
they're so nervous, and they're like, am I showing this correct? I got this one day where I can mess it up and it ruins my entire relationship.
Yeah.
And instead of telling that person exactly, and you as the partner need to listen,
Yes.
because it could trigger you to make you feel, because maybe that's your love language of giving. And then all of a sudden your partner's telling you, well, that doesn't really work for me. I love it when you just say to me,
Words of
I
affirmation. Yeah. Yeah. Or touch. So here's the thing about assumptions. Where do they come from? Why are we living in our own idea that we have to know everything, so we make assumptions on everything that's happening around us? And that really has to do with insecurity, right? Assumptions come from an idea that we're trying to control our own environment by assuming that we know what everyone else is thinking or doing. It makes us feel safe, right? So we feel safe if we can assume the thoughts words, patterns, behaviors of others around us, either in a positive vein or in a negative vein. Like there are people who make lots of positive assumptions. So I'll give you an example. I always tell, my students that I work with, I'm like, I just assume that everyone likes me. It makes my life so much easier because those that don't, I don't have to know about, right? So I assume that everyone likes me. Now, there are other people in the world that assume that everyone's out to get them or everyone dislikes them, and it creates a host for how you live your life. Right? So assumptions aren't always a bad or good thing. It's like everything else, assumptions are neutral. It's just the awareness of assumptions. What are you assuming? Are you assuming the best in people, or are you assuming the worst in people? Are you, making assumptions about, people's behaviors? Like it's none of your business how other people behave. You have no idea what's in their background unless their behavior is directly affecting you. So if you're making assumptions about people at the grocery store, the way they look or the way they talk or the way they act, right? Then really you have nothing else to do, because that to me feels more like judgment. I'm judging those people so that I feel better about myself. Well, whoa, is that the way I want to feel better about myself? No, I want to assume that people like me because I assume that my intentions are good. That I'm making, decisions and doing things with the right intention. So making assumptions, ties into minding your own business. It ties into, understanding that we're all connected, and, that judgment doesn't help uplift people. And if you're using judgment of others to lift yourself up, then just notice.
Right. It goes back to the other two agreements, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
authentic with what the words that you're saying, and don't judge a book by its cover.
Yes, be impeccable, speak your truth in a kind and conscious manner. And don't take things personally.
I mean, don't take things personally. I mean, this morning, I was trying to juggle a couple of things and double booked myself, try to get things going. Wasn't sure whether I was going to wake up on time, because that's my problem, that I'm very like, okay, am I going to be too tired? And in all of this, I remember sitting and being a little bit upset at myself, going, and then I remember what I just read last night, right? And I said, damn it, I didn't take ownership of the schedule. I didn't ask what I needed. I tried to wing it.
Yeah.
And in winging it sort of became muddy, because then I have others accounting and waiting for me, and I wasn't accountable. And that's another thing when we assume, right? We assume that maybe the schedule is going to work out, and we start like, oh, I'm going to just get this done because I can multitask and I'll just mush it all in together. But there are others that are waiting on you and also need to do things. And I was dragging people along, rushing somebody who's going to give me a ride, my partner, you, and all of a sudden, it just didn't feel good. And those are the toxic that Don Miguel Ruiz talks about, right? It's that poison, right? And it can easily trigger me to be upset and lash out at somebody that has nothing to do with the situation. So I had to sit down and feel that feeling, guys. And those feelings, when we talk about our chakras, those feelings when you're feeling like triggered and anger in your heart, you're getting upset when you just woke up, and figuring out, going back to the breath, and then realizing and taking ownership of sometimes also ourselves creating things. And I go, damn it, I should have just been clear. I was already up. I should have made the ownership and taken that responsibility, set the time, show up, and then I could have set up the other section. So even though my schedule was conflicted, I was too afraid, because fear kicks in.
Yeah.
Of wanting to make everybody happy.
Well,
because you assume.
There's a boundary. Right?
Yeah.
Assumptions, boundaries, over scheduled, people pleasing, those are all things that we're all guilty of. you know, and it's like, so you go back, it was not your intention,
Mhm.
right, to, to set people off this morning, from their schedules or the routines. You were in the mode of attempting to, please everyone. So your assumption is that I'll be able to get it all done. So there's the assumption. So now you have to backtrack from that, and you have to say, I tend to rely on things falling into place rather than creating, something more concrete.
Yeah,
So it's just an awareness. I mean, did things fall into place this morning?
they did. And you know what? I also apologized.
Mm.
And I apologized to my partner because I assumed that, he was awake and we could get the ball rolling. And then when he asked me, hey, I need more time to get my day going, then I kind of was sitting around and, in another energy world. And I apologized and I said, you know what? I am sorry. We didn't talk about this last night. We didn't set up a schedule for both of us so that we can get
Communication.
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 Because
Yeah.
sometimes in our fear of communicating and asking what we need, that no, which he talks about too, right? It's the
Yeah.
no. And it's okay to ask for what you need. And no is a full sentence. And it's
No,
not,
is a
don't
full
take it personal,
sentence.
which goes to the next. Don't
Yeah.
take things personal. So
Yeah.
if we can balance these 4 agreements. I mean, this is why this book, guys, is so amazing, because he makes it so simple that it's scary.
It's a lifelong read is what it is, because you can pick up this book wherever you are and glean something new from it. You're like, wow, in the beginning, you're like, oh yeah, but it seems too simple to be true. And then because you've internalized it, because you've kind of had the awareness shift, at every stage that you're growing, you can come back to it and be like, wow, yeah, I need that right now. And I need that right now. And I need all of this right now, because it all ties in, it
Mhm.
ties into the stories that we tell ourselves create our life. So what it is and how it is that we're talking to ourselves become what it is and how it is that shows up in our lives. So, as you start to master or gain control, there's all these other factors, right? You have zero control over others. What they say and do is none of your business. It's only about how I respond to them. What are my poisons? What am I allowing inside of me that's creating dis-ease, discourse, disconnection inside of me? It's all of those things. And we have to pay attention to noticing without judgment our own patterns, if it surrounds boundaries and being able to say no, and not feeling bad about that, like you're disappointing someone else. You can never disappoint someone else. If you're feeling disappointment, it's your wound, right? But you can't push that on someone else. If they're feeling disappointment, that's their wound, and your actions don't create their disappointments. Their attachment to your actions create their disappointments. Right. So they're attached to the idea, like you're attached to the idea that, that your spouse was going to be ready this morning, right? So when that doesn't pan out and you have zero control over whether other people are ready or not, when that doesn't pan out, you get disappointed, but you want to push that on him for not being ready. You're like, wait a minute, we didn't even talk about this.
Yeah.
So there's so much to just notice and not judge, but like when you're aware of something, then you can shift it.
Of course, because then when you shift it and you take ownership of whether it's your communication, it feels so good when I finally acknowledged it. And we both for a second almost bickered and got into it, and then it was like, for what? Like, what happened? It was just, and I apologized and I said, I'm really sorry, because I know that now he was feeling the pressure that I was trying to record and get on, and now he's like, I'm not ready, and what is going on? And we've been up since 7 in the morning, nothing is working because
Right.
none of us were communicating.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
one was communicating what their needs were. And that is it again, guys. It's so simple sometimes, but it's so hard because we want to please. And so
Yes.
setting boundaries, making sure that you're loving yourself, and that way you can love others. When you fill your cup, you can then pour
Then
on.
it spills right on over. That's right. That's right.
That's
But you got
right.
to keep refilling your cup. You can't be moving on empty.
Nope. And and then be careful with the stories that you create. I love that in his book, he talks about the mall, and you see somebody and they smile at you, and how all of a sudden, you might have a crush on this person, and you create this story, which is what you said, Susan, this whole creation of this story that you get to all of a sudden, you're married and you have children, and you just created this world. Just as how easy we can create that world that's not even happening is how we can create an assumption of how our day is going to be.
Yes.
Going to
And
be a
and
great day.
and we have to speak that into reality. We have to say the things
Yes.
that are important to us. We hold back. We hold back because we're fearful of the other person's response. What if they don't? And I'm saying, you know what? What if they do?
Mm-hmm.
What if they don't agree with me? Hey, what if they do? And why does it matter? And maybe they don't agree with you now, but you speak your truth and it plants seeds for someone else to grow. It's like, what are we, why are we making assumptions rather than asking the questions?
This even happens at work, guys. I left a job and when I went back to say hello and everything, I explained to them my goals, right? Like, hey, I'm here and I'm accessible. I had to make a change for my family, but I'm also available to help. And it created a whole different opportunity that I wasn't even expecting. They heard what I needed and what I wanted to offer on my terms. And I wasn't expecting anything. I wasn't expecting right away, yes, or, I just was trying to explain myself and say, this is what my next goal is. This is what I want to do. And fear could basically say, well, why are you even saying this? Instead, I let it go. And it created this beautiful opportunity for me to be able to come back and work on my schedule, my terms with their terms, because it's two agreements. Again, it's agreements. So it's a beautiful book, everyone. If you don't have it, you can on YouTube. I'm sure there's a bunch of them that you can listen to. And we've always talked about that. Don't be afraid of the beginning. It gets a little bit complicated. Go straight to the agreements first, and read them. We're going to definitely touch base on the last agreement, which is, Susan, can you remind me?
Oh, we're going back to it. Hold on. So the last agreement is to, and it makes perfect sense, right? It's always do your best. Always do your best. So impeccable with your word. Don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions, and always do your best, right? Your best is always good enough in this moment, and that's another resistor. We could talk about that at another time, but fear of not being good enough. Right. No, trust that you are exactly where you need to be. Growth is happening for everyone. No one's there. No one is there. They
I
are
always say,
not there.
you stop growing and you stop learning when unfortunately you're 6 feet under. So
Yeah.
every day is a learning experience. Every day when you assume that you think you know something and someone teaches you a different way, there's 1,001 ways to do math or get to some place, right? Some of them might be just one way to get to that place. In other places, you can take the highway and you can go local. So it's the same way with life. So how do we see that? How do we assume? How do we make our assumptions that, it's already hard when we haven't even given it a try? So,
And I think just a last thought, one thing that I find myself doing is I often say, I'm not in their shoes. I'm not living their life. I have no way of knowing how they think, how they were raised, where they were raised, what they come from, what the dynamics are. So I am in no position to assume or judge. Just a
and
gentle reminder.
so reminder, guys. And with that, we wrap up today. Thank you everyone for joining us. Like, share, you know what to do, guys. You guys are all experts at this. And we just are asking because we can't assume that you are experts.
And if you're not, then try it and get good at it.
Try
I
it.
don't know.
Like it,
I don't
share it, send it to somebody. We love you guys. Have a great day.
Thank you.